I'm Dr. Molly Ness, host of the End Book Deserts podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey there, Burned In Teachers. Welcome to episode 106 of the Burned In Teacher podcast. Today, I'm going to clear up any confusion about my beliefs concerning your burnout, why it happened, and why I believe so deeply that it is not your fault, but your responsibility to grow through your burnout. Let's get started. Welcome to the Burned In Teacher podcast. I'm Amber Harper, and the educators on this podcast are brave enough to share their stories of burnout with the world. On BIT, we get real, we get honest, and we take action. Action against the burnout with stories from burned out teachers, advice from experts, and actionable steps you can take today to beat the burnout and become a happier, more fulfilled human being. Let's get started. This episode of the Burned In Teacher podcast is brought to you by none other than Burned In Teacher and my free Building Better Boundaries Challenge, taking place from April 19th through the 23rd. Now, don't worry, if you didn't get my emails about this challenge, you can still go to burnedinteacher.com/challenge, register, and even if you sign up a little late, because it did start on Monday, today, April 19th, and you will get caught up with simple instruction, simple, quick homework to help you to build better boundaries. Because if you've been around here for any amount of time, hopefully you know that I believe that we do have a burnout problem, but normally it starts with a boundaries problem. So we're going to address why we need boundaries, what they are, how we can bring them into our lives, and what they mean to us. So I hope that you decide to join us for the Building Better Boundaries Challenge. Simply go to burnedinteacher.com/challenge, and you'll be able to access these quick lessons, as well as I will be going live every single day in the Burned In Teacher podcast Facebook group. Starting today, if you're listening to this on April 19th, 2021, I'll be going live every day, Monday through Friday, to walk you through these lessons and to answer any questions, to connect with you, and to help you to build better boundaries in your life. So I hope to see you in the challenge and in the Burned In Teacher podcast Facebook community, where we are going to open up a big conversation on how we can set better boundaries, build better boundaries, that is, in our lives. So go to facebook.com/groups/burnedinteacher if you are not a member already. And if you are, be on the lookout. I'm going to be going live this week. So I cannot wait to connect with you there. Okay, so now that you know we've got this big thing going on, you're going to be learning so much about yourself and how to build boundaries around the things that matter most to you so that you can begin your journey out of burnout. But today's episode, oh my gosh, I have been so excited about this. I thought about it all spring break, especially because the realization that I needed to have this conversation with you actually occurred over spring break. And it stemmed from a post that I actually created inside of the Burned In Teacher podcast Facebook community. I asked the question, what's one choice that you've made that has contributed to your burnout? Now, this question stemmed from episode 103, where I shared the 10 biggest mistakes that not only contributed to my burnout, but kept me there for way too long. And it's been a really pretty popular episode. A lot of people have really resonated with it. I've gotten a lot of emails from you about, what you pulled from that. And it's been really eye-opening with what resonates the most with you and what we have in common as far as our burnout is concerned. So when I asked this question, I got some really great answers. So again, let me repeat the question. What's one choice that you've made that has contributed to your burnout? To be honest, a lot of the answers really focused on saying yes. All right. Not even exploring really saying no to anything. One person said saying yes to everything and not asking for help. Somebody else just said saying yes. Somebody else said saying yes too much. Another burn-in teacher said being helpful. But there was one answer that really stuck with me. And it made me really question if I've been clear about what I believe about your burnout experience. And here's the answer that really made me kind of step back and think. here's what it said. Choosing to teach instead of a better job. My burnout isn't my fault and is a result of the ridiculous expectations and fear-based atmosphere of a state-labeled failing targeted school. That's really heavy. And at first I was thinking, I didn't mean it that like I listen guys, I go where you go, okay? Like I automatically am like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. Like, oh, I'm so offended. Like I'm no different than you there, okay? But then I step back and I think, okay, where is this burned in teacher on their journey? And in this process, I know that there are different stages of burnout. And when you're in a stage of 0 or 1, where you don't see any different way of being, you're thinking about how impossible teaching is, you're having trouble sleeping, you're not really doing anything differently. In a stage 1, you're blaming others, you're showing strong emotions, you're having that negative self-talk, or even outwardly having this negative talk. And you all know that I believe that that's okay, that that's where you are. And I quite frankly experience a lot of teachers. I work with a lot of teachers that are in this space. There's nothing that I am going to say to change your mind unless you want to change it yourself. And that's really what this episode is about and that's why I even titled it this, all right? Your burnout is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. It's not this teacher's fault that her school has been labeled as a quote unquote failing school, but it is her responsibility to decide how she's going to move through these challenges that those expectations are causing her. And this is a chance for this teacher, and I'm sure many of you teachers out here, especially dealing with all of these decisions that have been made and are continuing to be made about school success or, pandemic teaching, any of the myriad of reasons that decisions are being made where you may not feel like your voice is being heard. This is actually an opportunity to choose if we're going to live in that state and be angry and resentful and frustrated and burned out for the rest of our career and carry those things. If this teacher or any teacher decides to leave and go to another school, to think about what it is that they can do to process these challenges. I'm not saying to tolerate them, but to process them in a healthy way to make a sound decision. And so I want to kind of explore this idea with you and make sure that you are clear about if you're here and you're listening and you continue to listen to the Burned In Teacher podcast. Maybe you're saying, hold on, I don't agree with you, I'm out. That's okay. That's where you are. But for those of you who stay, for those of you who want to see change, for those of you who want to grow through this opportunity that I truly believe that we have in burnout, because that is what I believe has happened through my burnout experiences, is it's caused me to think about looking closely at what needs to change, having the hard conversations, calling out the things that you notice and paying attention and talking about them. That's what this episode is all about. And here's another thing. In these moments, when we put ourselves out there and we ask tough questions and we start conversations, we are not going to attract everybody to us. That's what I sort of learned from this, that when I ask certain questions, when I state what I believe and what I stand for in this burnout atmosphere that, Burned In Teacher has created, I'm going to push some people away. I'm going to have people that don't agree with me. And I'm also going to attract people that are leaning in and saying, tell me more, or I'm curious about. And we start a conversation that they've never had before. And I want to make sure, I actually went live in the Burn In Teacher podcast Facebook community after a run because I saw this one day and I really needed to sleep on it because I was upset for a moment, not at the person who said it, but that what I had asked was taken that way. And doesn't this happen all the time in our lives where we are misunderstood, or the way that we put something or say something is maybe not in the best way, right? So I wanted to sleep on it, got up in the morning, went for a run, and kind of processed it and decided to just go live and just kind of open up about this. And In doing that, I built a boundary. But I didn't just build a boundary between what I stand for and what I don't stand for. I built a boundary for myself that day. I built a boundary that said, Amber, in these situations where you are changing the conversation, and this is what I want for you in your life. When you are in the process of growing, because I'm growing, you're growing, we're all growing all the time, we're all changing. In these moments where you are challenged, where your beliefs are challenged, you get to make a choice. Do I believe what I just sounded like what I believed in? Do I believe that or do I not? And am I going to stand by that belief even if it pushes people away? Even if it doesn't make everybody happy? Because I know in this question, there was a lot of realization of, well, we say yes because we want to help, or we say yes because we don't want to make people mad. In this situation where, I had obviously caused somebody to feel like I was making their burnout their fault, I was able to say, no, that's not what I meant. But I do mean it in this way. And if you don't believe that too, maybe this isn't the space for you yet. Maybe it will be in the future. But I'm saying no to apologizing and feeling bad about what I stand for. And I think that we don't pay enough attention to how that in itself is a really important boundary. That we can be comfortable enough in our beliefs to be uncomfortable. Does that make sense? Because it was uncomfortable. And I'm really actually very grateful for it because it caused me to question my beliefs. It caused me to question if I actually meant what I said, or what I asked rather. And I believe that your burnout is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And what I mean by that is there are many factors. I couldn't even possibly state all the factors that could be causing your burnout. It's different for everybody, and everybody, of course, I have the different burnout types through the quiz and the different stages that people are in. But whatever you're dealing with on a daily basis, personally, professionally, that is so deeply personal, right? And it's not your fault, okay? Things happen, right? But there is a responsibility involved. And actually, where I've kind of adopted this belief and kind of made it my own is from the book called Boundaries. In the book Boundaries by Dr. Cloud and Dr. Townsend, they say, you are responsible to others, but you are only responsible for yourself. So in the case of this, possible misunderstanding of what I meant by asking that question, I am responsible to answer her. I am responsible to stand by this question and to make sure that I'm very, very clear. Because I am ultimately responsible for my beliefs and for my mission and for my passion to support teachers who are feeling this way that this teacher feels. And that's the main message here, is that it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility because you are responsible for yourself. You're not responsible for anyone else's feelings. You're not responsible for anybody else's choices. You are responsible to them. So, for example, you signed a contract to be a teacher, so you're responsible to honor that contract, right? But you're responsible for the boundaries, for the choices, for the beliefs that you have around the fact that you are a teacher on paper, right? So, because I believe that your burnout is your responsibility, that doesn't mean that you necessarily know exactly what you need to do and when. And again, it's different for everybody. But it starts with taking responsibility. And I know a long time, my goodness, I'm telling you what, at the time that you're listening to this, April 19th, 2021, it has now officially been 5 years since I started Burned In Teacher. I started in April of 2016. Can you believe it? And all those years ago, I remember writing a blog post that says, just admit it. You're burned out. And I remember writing about how the first step is just saying it out loud. This was even before I had the burnout types, you guys. Okay, so this is a long time ago. And I still believe it to this day to say, I'm burned out, or I'm burned and bored, or I'm burned and unbalanced, or I'm not quite burned out, but something is clearly off. In doing that, you're starting to take responsibility. And I think you should give yourself a pat on the back. In listening to these podcasts, you're taking responsibility for your burnout. In starting some conversations, and even the hard ones, you're taking responsibility for your burnout. And one step after another, whatever that is for you, in whatever direction you need to go in order to grow through your burnout. And by grow, I mean to see gradual, proactive, positive changes in your life because of these challenges that you're facing. You have to take responsibility. Because if you don't change it, you choose it. So, with that being said, and I told myself this is going to be a very short, to the point episode, I want to help you. And I want to help you by starting to build some boundaries. And sometimes those boundaries start with boundaries that we need to set with our own beliefs and our own self-talk, to be honest. So, if you have not already, and I hope you're excited, I really do want to encourage you to join the Building Better Boundaries Challenge that is starting today, April 19th, at the date that this is releasing. However, don't worry, it's not too late. If you register today or tomorrow, I'm not going to have it available to you forever, but for the next week, you're going to be able to join that challenge and have a conversation with us inside of the Burned In Teacher Podcast Facebook community, because I didn't build this community to have simple, easy, sunshine and rainbows conversations all the time. I built it so that we could have a safe place to have the hard conversations and to talk about how we feel. And I am going to talk about them. You know, I'm not going to call anybody out. You know, I'm not here to shame anybody, but I'm here to bring these feelings to the forefront and really have a deep, hard conversation about them. So, of course, you know, I'm going to invite you to go to that Facebook community right now and tell me how you feel about this. I want to know your opinion about it. Or I want you to email me at support@burnedinteacher.com. So I hope to see you inside the challenge, and I want you to take a deep breath because you just took another step to becoming a burned in teacher. Burn on, everybody. If you enjoyed today's podcast episode, you can head over to burnedinteacher.com, where you can access the entire vault of Burned In Teacher podcast episodes and more information about ways I want to help you go from burned out teacher to burned in human. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would be so grateful if you would head over to iTunes and leave a review and a rating about the Burned In Teacher podcast. Until next time, take a deep breath, because you just took another step to becoming a burned in teacher. Burn on.